finishing up on TikTok. Miss these hi friends. Yeah, g'day everybody. It's been a while. Thank you for being patient. It's been a big few weeks. I don't know if I look 15 years older, but I'm feeling pretty sleep deprived. But we're back. We've got a live stream. I've got a bunch of videos organised for the next 10 weeks. So, we're back with a vengeance, guys. Thank you very much for putting up with me being away for the last couple of weeks. But I'm guessing most of you guys know my beautiful wife gave birth to our son 3 weeks ago. So it's been a long couple of weeks and we've just been adjusting. So I've been trying to be helpful indoors rather than being out here talking to all you fabulous people. But we're back. Can't comment because I've been lazy. Haven't come nearly as regularly as I used to. Oh, well, I'm glad you're here now. G'day, Music for the Win. How are you? Tamara, our regular moderator. Everybody be nice to Tamara or she'll bring out the moderator's boot. G'day, Chris. How are you? Thank you very much. Besides being back to live streams, back to YouTube, g'day, Lily, back to videos in general, I do have some fantastic news. I don't know how many of you guys have followed us for like the last 2 years or how many of you guys are sort of just hopping on, but I say it all the time, and it sounds terrible. I don't want to be sooking and whinging, but the last 18 months for somebody who runs a mobile wildlife education business has been terrible. We've basically been unemployed. We haven't been able to go to shows, and we haven't had any bookings. Between lockdowns, I've got very good friends who managed to do all right. They live in capital cities where they can live off like little bookings here and there. The unfortunate thing is the town I live in is less than 10,000 people. So I rely on big annual events, the Ballarat show, the Eden Hope show, the Swan Hill show, things that might run 3 days and happen every single year. That's what I feed my family with. That's what I feed my reptiles with. And those haven't existed for almost 2 years. So you guys are the reason why we've managed to keep the animals. You guys watching, you guys supporting on Patreon, you guys are sharing our videos, and the couple of bucks on AdSense has kept us alive. But starting in the last 10 days, we have got some bookings. It doesn't sound like a big deal. There's companies in other places that, they get them all the time. But for us, in the place that we live, it's amazing. It's the best feeling knowing that, look, this summer, things might be close to normal, where we can afford to start doing some of the things we want, fixing some enclosures, fixing up the reptile room. We're going to travel. We're going to go and do some more videos at other places. So yeah, we're back. We're not just back on live streams, back on YouTube. It looks like, and I'm not going to hold my breath, but it looks like we might actually be back in business. So I really want to say thank you to all you guys for helping us survive from then to now. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. We would have had to sell up and move on to other dreams. The other thing I need to do before we get too far in it is, of course, shout out to our channel sponsors. We've got some wonderful Patreon supporters, but our two major sponsors is the Warrnambool Wildlife Encounters, runs a fantastic miniature zoo, and Perth Reptile Relocation. So make sure you check those two guys out on Facebook. If you want your business mentioned, send us a message, check us out on Patreon, things like that. Good to join you. Last night, hiking the Grampians, month to go on my big lap around Australia. Oh, I'm jealous. I'd love to go on a lap around Australia. What snake am I holding? This little guy here, his name is Mr. Spots. And Mr. Spots, I think somebody's pointed out below, is a spotted python. So one of the smallest, Tamara knows them all, one of the smallest species of python, not only in Australia, but in the world. So the spotted python is in what we call the children's python family, or Antaresia family, which is basically the children's pythons. So up until recently, it's been the children's python, the Stimson's python, the spotted python, and the pygmy python. Recently, there's been some genetic evidence to suggest that the Stimson's python and children's python are the same thing, and some people say that we should break the spotted python into two either subspecies or species, but one in New Guinea, one in Australia. So that puts him at about the fourth smallest python in the world. He's pretty well full grown. He's not a big one, but he's pretty well full grown. 2.5 feet or something. So yeah, he's a perfect snake for if anybody comes to a show and they're scared or they're nervous. Mr. Spots is the one we start them off with. He's fantastic. We had people talking in the TikTok live stream, 5 minutes ago, about how it's sad we can't keep ball pythons in Australia. And I get it, like people love all the colours and stuff. But temperament wise, like this guy is as good as any species of snake you will ever keep. So there's no real justification. There's no need. We've got something that fills the same role. A small to medium sized snake that's easy to handle, easy to work with, easy to get feeding, easy to breed, and the amount of colors and variations coming into these guys, the next 10 years, these guys are going to just explode even more. Personally, color morphs and stuff aren't my cup of tea, but I can look at them and see why people would love them. How do I get a python off you if it bites and claws around my arm and squeezes me? Depends how confident you are. I just leave them and they usually let go. But, one more plug, I suppose. Other way to support us, guys, is we've got Wicked Wildlife merch, mugs, we've got t-shirts, we've got jumpers, all that sort of jargon. You can check that out. But yeah, so if I'm bitten by a snake, python that is, by him, I'm just going to let go. He might, try and start swallowing me. He's going to realize, look, I can't eat that. Night Loot Lamine, thank you for popping by. And he's going to spit it out. I've worked with very big snakes, like dangerously big snakes at zoos where we have retics and things like that. And we used to keep that basically hand sanitizer or even metho in a little jar behind the, the enclosure. And this was worst case scenario. Like we're talking about a snake that could kill you if you don't get it off. A squirt of that over their face is going to be repulsive enough to basically make them want to let go. So yeah, that's a worst case scenario. But yeah, more often than not, they are going to let go by themselves. It just takes a fair bit of confidence to let that happen. What do I think of people who inject themselves with venom for better health? I think they're insane. I know that there's people who inject themselves with venom because they consider it scientific research. And look, there is some interesting findings. Bill Haast, who was very, very famous, he injected himself with venom. It's actually called mithridatism. Injecting yourself or exposing yourself to any poison or any toxin with the goal of becoming immune. And it traces back to an enemy of Rome 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, something like this, who was so terrified of being poisoned that he would regularly consume small amounts of poison to become immune to them. He was King Mithridates. So because of that, mithridatism is exposing yourself to toxins. And Bill Haast did this with snakes, several different species of snakes. He injected himself, he milked snakes for a living. He injected himself with snake venom until he became immune to a bunch of species. And it worked. In fact, it worked so well that there was at least 4 or 5 cases recorded where people were bitten by snakes, they didn't have anti-venom available, and they were able to take blood transfusions from Bill Haast to treat the snake bites. He had enough antibodies in his own blood to treat them. So it does work. That being said, we know it works. So people doing it today, unless they've got a specific project in mind, are doing it because they're like, look what I can do. The other thing is, from a safety perspective, it's useless. Bill Haast basically proved, to do it, he had to expose himself to monocle cobra venom. He had to do it to like 5 different rattlesnakes. He had to do it to spitting cobras. He had to do it, you couldn't inject yourself with brown snake venom and then handle all the snakes that you have without any fear of getting bitten. So yeah, there's not really any positives. It's interesting that it's possible, but that's about it. Nice stream. Thank you very much, Oscar. It's been a while, so I might be able to practice. I don't know. What's my favorite dream snake? I'd say Owen Pelly's. Like I got a picture. You can't see it with the glare. Got a picture of an Owen Pelly up here. I got to play with an Owen Pelly python a couple of years ago. They're pretty cool. But file snakes would be right up there as well. I'd love to have an aquarium with file snakes. Do I have a black-headed python? No, I don't keep any black-headed pythons these days. I have done. They just grow big, and I've got a lot of other snakes that are going to grow big. Like my olive python, she could grow quite a bit bigger. We've got our baby Scrubby who will get out in a little bit. He's going to grow massive. So look, if a black-headed python came along that needed a home, I'd be interested. But I'm not going to go chasing one if it means that down the track I've got less space to build bigger enclosures for the snakes that I have. That being said, we're looking at moving a few snakes outdoors. I want to move my Murray Darlings outside. I want to move my diamond pythons outside. And that will give us more space for bigger enclosures. So that'll be cool. It would come in handy if I owned a venomous snake. I own lots of venomous snakes. So it doesn't come in handy if you own a venomous snake. And the reason being is the risks outweigh the gains. Like, I have handled venomous snakes my entire life and never had a bite. So to gain an immunity, I would have had to inject myself weekly or even more frequently. I would have had to go through all the side effects. I would have increased my risks of a bite, because to obtain the venom, you've got to milk them. And the vast majority of snake bites in the snake keeping profession, like if you look at somebody who's been bitten more than 5 times, most of the time they're going to be somebody who milks snakes for a living. It's like Bill Haast, he'd had dozens and dozens of snake bites. That being said, if you're a regular keeper, you should never get bitten. If you're doing things right, there is no reason you need to ever be bitten by a venomous snake. It could happen, but yeah, it's not worth injecting yourself for. What's my opinion on free handling? I'm okay with it. Hang on, I'll put this guy back and we'll get out another animal for a bit. We're going to talk about free handling. So, free handling. I used to be strongly against free handling. I used to think it was a terrible look for the hobby, and that young kids were going to do it. And now that I've grown up, I'm like, you know what? Not really. No more than we millions and millions and millions of people saw Steve Irwin have a taipan lick him on the face, and we didn't have an influx of people being bitten on the nose by inland taipans. So yeah, I don't think that part really holds up. What is free handling? For those of you who don't know, free handling is basically handling a venomous snake without the use of tools. So, I don't have a hook on me handy, but usually we use a snake hook when we're handling venomous snakes. Free handling is handling them without that. That being said, free handling could go anywhere from, you'll often see, somebody tailing a snake. That's arguably free handling. You'll see what I do, where I've got some snakes that I will hold, with my bare hands. That's free handling. And then you've got somebody who'll have a venomous snake wrapped around their neck, where they have no, control over that animal. They're basically at flat out luck whether they get bitten or not. That's free handling. So, there's a huge variety. I don't have anything against it personally. When I see people holding a snake around their neck, I'm like, well, that's not relying on skill. That's relying on a fair bit of luck and chance. Whereas when I handle venomous snakes, and look, I could get a bite any day, but when I free handle venomous snakes, you'll still see I don't handle them like a python. I will keep their head facing away from me. I will keep them at a point where if I need to, hold their tail and let their body drop, I can go back to tailing without hurting the snake. And basically gravity will pull their head away from me. So you can free handle with control, and you can free handle without control. But if somebody wants to free handle, I don't see anything wrong with it. Some people do it in a way where it's like, look, this is just how I handle snakes. And then other people do it like, look at me, look at what I can do. So there's a bunch of different things. So king cobras are very, very often free handled, and for a slightly different reason. You're talking about snakes that are so big that sometimes it just gets hard to deal with a hook, I haven't dealt with king cobras. I've dealt with a reasonably big spectacle cobra. She was like 9.5 feet. And even her, so I can imagine what a king would be like. I'd have a hook under her body, like the top third of her body. I'd have her tailed, and there'd be another, half a meter of snake dangling down. A king cobra, you're holding it halfway up its body, so it's just about wrapping around your legs while you got the hook out. So some people, for such big snakes, just think free handling is an easier option. But yeah, different things. How is your friend who was bitten by a venomous snake a few months ago? Ben Avery. Apparently he's doing well. He doesn't keep venomous snakes anymore, but he's still catching a lot of venomous snakes, which makes sense. He was basically told that if he was bitten again, it would be even worse because it did cause permanent kidney damage. So he decided that, look, he still wants to catch snakes. To him, that's a justifiable thing. It's for the good of snakes, for the good of people's safety. But he decided keeping snakes for his own personal satisfaction, he couldn't justify the risks. So he found homes for his venomous snakes. Sometimes it's easier to free handle my venomous than to hook. Always a risk. Yeah, so, that, I suppose that's what I mean by this free handling and this free handling. Like, I've got venomous snakes where, if I'm taking him out of a enclosure or into a tub, or out of the tub and back in the enclosure, I'll pick him up. But there's a jump from that to maybe showing off. And look, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Some of our thumbnails and stuff like that, some of the best videos we've got in terms of how interested people are where they see me free handling, particularly our red belly black snake. And there's an element to that. I don't think I'm better than anybody else because I do it. But if that gets an extra couple of hundred people to watch, and then by accident they learn about red belly black snakes, I'm fine with that. I used to be worried that people will see that and they'll try that again themselves and then they'll get bitten. And I have people mention that in the comments. But the way that I see it is, like I said, Steve Irwin used to do it and nobody got bitten. But even there's a certain point where we have to become responsible for our own... I'll get somebody else out, speaking of getting bitten. There's a certain point where we have to become responsible for our own safety. And, we're able to watch motor car racing without drag racing on the road. We're able to watch mixed martial arts without getting into fights at the pub. If you're not able to watch a professional do anything, snake handling included, and without assuming that you can do it yourself, I can watch my mechanic, pull apart and put together my car. I'm not going to think that means I can do it. So, people have to be responsible for their own safety. So yeah, this is our little scrub python. Sorry to chat for so long without any animals out. You'd all get bored of me. Our little scrub python is my favourite species of snake in the country. And I can't wait until he's gigantic. Hopefully he's nicer than most scrub pythons when he's gigantic, but we'll get him there. I think he's growing. I don't know. I was saying to one of you guys the other day, I think he's growing, but I see him every day, so I don't really notice it. He must be growing. But you've got a little bit of stuck shed on you, but... This species does grow to be the largest snake in the country. Have I ever handled an anaconda? I've handled a young anaconda. I've never handled an anaconda that's, at a size where you'd be like, wow, it's an anaconda. Like I'm talking about a 4 foot long snake. So yeah, it was cool just to say, look, I've handled an anaconda. But it was smaller than most of the carpet pythons that I kept. So, yeah. He's so cute. How big will he get? So this species is capable of reaching up over 5 meters in length. There's records. They're sort of dubious records, but there is records of up plus 6.5, even over 7 meters in length. So biggest snake in Australia, or longest snake, so very certainly, and about the 5th longest snake in the world. So you're talking about a snake that gets as long as some of the Burmese pythons, things like this. They don't get as bulky. They're a species that lives in the trees, and if you're something as heavy as a Burm or an anaconda, you can't climb. It gets very hard to climb. Whereas these guys become quite long, elongated snakes. So even for their, when you get to 5 meters plus, they're still a lot skinnier than some of the other snakes that are at that size as well. But they're still a very, very big snake. Wait, what are the 5 longest snakes? Oh, God. The retic's the longest snake, reticulated python. The anaconda would be arguably second, I suppose. You'd have the Burmese python, the Indian python, and then the scrub python. The rock python might be ahead of the Indian python, the African rock python, but I reckon that'd be them. Kyle, thank you very much. It's been a while since you watched the live stream, so some dosh for feed. Thank you very much. The power bill's just arrived, so I can put that towards that and convince the other half that I'm not using too much electricity. She'll make it very happy. Oh my God, he's going to grow so much. He will. And they grow fairly quick. Interestingly, though, not all of them get that big. And like I said this, whether it's on here or whether it's on the TikTok, the funny thing with snake sizes is people imagine they're all going to get to a certain size. Like, I'll take out a brown snake at a show. I'll say that brown snakes get 2 meters long. Mine will be 1.5 meters. And they'll say, how much long? When will he get to 2 meters? It doesn't mean he's going to get to 2 meters just because brown snakes can. Like I always say, the Guinness Book of Records says that people grow 8 foot tall, and I will never get to 8 foot tall. So, not all scrub pythons will get that as big as the record breakers. Not all olive pythons, things like this. There's actually an island on the Great Barrier Reef called Milman Island, where the scrub pythons are dwarfed. They don't get much longer than 2.5 meters, because they live on an island where they have almost nothing to live off. Just birds that fly out from mainland to roost on the island. So there's no possums, no wallabies, no fruit bats, no big mammals to live off. So we've got dwarf scrubbies, which is pretty cool. There's none in captivity, and there's not, to my knowledge, been any information on whether This is purely a physical change. Like, we've got pygmy freshwater crocodiles in parts of the Northern Territory where they grow half the size of regular freshwater crocodiles. And for a long time, people thought maybe we've got a different species, or at least subspecies. But what they found out is it's just a food availability thing. So you could technically take those, put them in a zoo, hatch their babies out, and have their babies grow to bigger sizes. So they weren't different. They were just like humans in one country versus another. We'll have different heights, but we'll still be the same species. So there's been no information into whether they're like that. Could you take a Milman Island scrubby and feed it up? Or whether they've been separated for long enough to make them different genetically. What breed of snake did Voldemort have in Harry Potter? I've never watched Harry Potter, so I don't know. Send me a photo on Facebook and I can give you an idea. Like a dwarf retic, yeah. I don't have any experience with dwarf retics. I have dealt with a couple of regular reticulated pythons with dwarf and super dwarf retics. Yeah, there you go. I've dealt with a couple of regular retics in zoos and wildlife parks, but no dwarfs and super dwarfs or anything like that. But I have seen lots of videos with them and things like that, so I know what you're talking about. It's just a local variation that potentially in captivity could be bred up. Personally, I don't see the point. It'd be cool. Like, it'd be cool to keep them because you could say we've got Milman Island locality scrub pythons, but it'd be silly, in my opinion, to breed them because you want smaller scrub pythons. If you want smaller scrub pythons, keep carpet pythons. Like, might as well just keep carpets. I like scrubbies because I like the fact that they get big. They've got narky attitudes, and also I like they've got large scales on their heads. I don't know if I can show you. He's got really big scales in his head compared to a carpet. Big plates. He's like a dinosaur gone through a sausage machine. Scrubby is so much better handled than this. He is getting better. He's still really nippy when I open the little... He's still in a rack system, this fella. He's only a baby. But he's still, when I open the drawer, he's biting and hissing and carrying on. But once I get him out, he's doing really well. So, yeah. I'd love to have, a big 4.5 meter scrubby who's tame. We did a video on scrub pythons not long ago. A couple of months ago now, I suppose. With Lilydale High School. And they had a scrubby who was about as good as a scrubby can be. She's not like an olive python. She's still watching everything. But you could handle her very easily. You'd be able to use it for shows and displays. So I'd love a scrub python big enough to use for displays. That'd be fantastic. How can Americans own native Australian snakes? Great question. We get a lot of people ask this, and there's a couple of ways. Firstly, even though it's illegal to export reptiles from Australia, reptiles do still get outbred illegally. Is that guinea fowl you can hear in the background? You can. They're terrible. We got a bunch of guinea fowl. So Australian reptiles get out of Australia illegally. They get smuggled out and they turn up overseas. Because even though we can't export them, up until recently, once they got to America, you didn't have to prove where they came from. So once they were there, they could be bred, traded, sold. My understanding is that's been tightened up over there now. You can't import Australian reptiles in America. You can't import them from Asia or Europe, because it used to be that they were smuggled from Australia to Asia, and then somebody in Hong Kong would say that they bred them, and then they would import those into America. Whereas America, you cannot now import Australian reptiles from Asia or Europe, or the average person can't. But a lot of them still make it to America. That being said, there's a lot of animals that also make it over there perfectly legally. So rough-scaled pythons. Rough-scaled pythons are in the pet trade over in America. They're only discovered, relatively recently, the last couple of decades. And they're now, in the pet trade in America. What happened was they were a really cool snake. So zoos in Australia bred them. They're very easy to breed. They sent them to zoos in America. Being easy to breed, pretty soon all the zoos in America had the ones they wanted. And they sold some to, their keepers or private people that they were friends with. And they've been bred up from there. So some zoos still make it out legally. There's also some species in America that made it out of Australia prior to the rules that we have today really becoming either established or enforced. It's like bearded dragons. Bearded dragons were smuggled out of Australia. But they were smuggled out in an era where you could have basically said, look, this is a bearded dragon, I'm taking it on the plane. And nobody would have asked anything. So, and there's other species that may have existed in America before we had any rules about bringing them out of the country. So, I've seen news about people who wake up with carpet pythons in their bed. I live in fear that will happen to me. Look, it's possible. I've heard of people, and it happens to people around the world, not just carpet pythons. But you'd be very unlucky. That being said, in India, one of the big four snakes that kill people in India is the Indian krait. And the problem with the Indian krait, very small fangs, no pain from its venom, and it's nocturnal. And a lot of people bitten by kraits are bitten in their sleep, and they die in their sleep. They never wake up, which is pretty terrifying when you think about it. So it can happen, but we're talking about a country where people are living in. Most of the people bitten by kraits, bitten in villages with thatched roof huts with no doors, and they're sleeping on the floor. So for a carpet python, possible, not too likely. Would you say the coastal taipan is Australia's version of the black mamba? Their long size, deadly behaviour, extremely toxic. I would argue that they're similar to the black mamba in some ways. They can be very highly flighty. They can be unpredictable. In some ways, I think they're more unpredictable than what I've seen of mambas. I haven't handled mambas. But when I say more unpredictable than mambas, I mean most mambas are pissed off from the minute you open the enclosure to the minute you put them back in the enclosure. Whereas coastal taipans, in my experience, will often, they'll quieten down a little bit, and you'll be like, oh, look, he's getting used to this, he's adjusting, and then he'll just lose his rocker again. So coastal taipans do have that tendency. They're a little bit unpredictable. They're also a lot smaller though. Like, there is very big coastal ties. I've seen photos of somebody handling a coastal tie, like 2.5 meters long. And that is a scary animal to handle. But that is still like an average, below average size black mamba. So when it comes to mambas, people talk about their personality. I think we've got Australian snakes that can match them for personality. I think that those snakes don't necessarily match the mamba for its physical capabilities. The fact that a 3 or a 4 meter venomous snake, just to keep its head away from you while you're handling, takes a different way of handling to what Australians are most used to. Inland taipan is often more chilled than the coastal taipan, right? Certainly, a lot of people say the inland taipan is more chilled than the coastal taipan. That being said, I used to have an inland taipan that bit her last owner, put him in hospital for 11 days. So I think people often become complacent with inland taipans. I see a lot of inland taipans where people are like, oh, he's a puppy dog. Is it true that the Death Adder can strike faster than you can blink? I'm not a scientist, but I've been told that the time it takes for a Death Adder to go from standing still to striking to back is about half of the average human blink. So yeah, it's very, very fast. We used to say it's the fastest snake on earth. There is a few very strong candidates. The puff adder in Africa, some of the vipers in Asia, but very, very fast striking snakes. Things are starting to open up in the world. Hopefully soon you'll visit South Africa. I cannot wait to visit South Africa. I'm mostly just excited. Hopefully our very good friend in South Africa can visit here in Australia soon. He's been trying to visit here for 2 years now. But mostly I'm just excited to have some bookings again, guys. I'm very, very appreciative of all you guys, supporting us and helping us survive the last 2 years. But it'll be such a relief to know that we've got some work coming in to pay the bills and to not have to, push for Patreon supporters all the time. Which, I adore it. Basically, it means we've always had Patreon supporters. Our Patreon support can go back to what it's supposed to do, which is helping us visit new places to film more videos. Whereas the last year, the Patreon supporters have basically had to pay to feed the animals because it's been the only income we've had. Visit Northern New South Wales first. Rami wants to take me out to herping. I do have to visit Northern New South Wales. I've got, what is it? There's Coffs Harbour, have a dolphinarium. They've said I can come and film with their dolphins and sea lions. And the Irukandji Shark and Ray Centre, they've invited me over as well. So I do have some videos in Northern New South Wales. But, we've got a trip to Northern New South Wales, we've got a trip to Sydney, we've got a trip to Cairns, Brisbane and Adelaide to organise. So they won't all be in the next 6 months, but we will slowly get around them all. I need to head to sleep now, mate, but it's awesome seeing my live stream. Thank you very much. I remember seeing me at Ballarat Show one year. Thank you very much for stopping by. Make sure you leave a thumbs up and check them back next week. We do this every week. what we'll do, if anybody's got any other questions, we'll hammer through that. But we might call it a night before too long because, like I said, I'm very happy to be back doing live streams. But we are still on like a couple of hours sleep a night in this household. So keen for me to come to Brizzy. We're going to go to Brizzy. It's going to be a flying trip to Brizzy if it does as planned. But my friend Ben Gordon, he has Diagula Wildlife Park. He's been fantastic, but he's had some own problems. You know, he's been hit by COVID and stuff as well. He relies on people from overseas. But he's got some exotic wildlife we're going to go film. His place, we're going to do videos with capybaras and iguanas and alligators and monkeys and all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to do like a whole South American special. So yeah, we're going to get up to Brisbane to do that. Do I have any non-native species? Not really. Like there's guinea fowl running around outside. There's a peacock running around outside. But we don't display any non-natives, no. We can't keep non-native reptiles. And we can't keep non-native mammals. There's a lot of non-native birds that we're allowed to keep. You know, macaws and conures and Amazons and all that sort of stuff. So I know some other people that do use them. The only thing is it seems silly to me to have exotic parrots and native everything else. You know, like I'm not a bird person, I'm not a reptile person, I'm not a mammal person. Australian wildlife is my passion. Any native alligators to Australia? No, we don't have any alligators in Australia, which is confusing because if you go, well, I used to work in Townsville. I lived in a town called Alligator Creek. If you go to the Northern Territory, there's the Alligator River. But we used to call salties alligators and freshwater crocodiles, which is bizarre because salties are much, much, much bigger than alligators, much meaner than alligators. But yeah, no true alligators. So there's only two species of true alligator because you've got alligators and caimans who are both alligatoridae or alligatorids. So caimans are basically tropical alligators. But if you're talking about true alligators, you've only got the American alligator, only found in the US, and the Chinese alligator, only found in China. So yeah, only crocodiles in Australia. We've got two species, the saltwater crocodile, freshwater crocodile. How am I doing? I'm doing well. How are you? Closest call being bitten by a venomous snake. I've had several occasions where snakes have, been chewing on the front of my jeans. If I'm doing snake catching, I'm in socks tonight, but if I'm doing snake catching, I'm usually wearing like work boots. Karen, thank you very much. But if I'm doing like pit shows, where we set up the fence and I'm handling venomous snakes and I might do 6 pit shows a day, I usually wear like Ariat boots, like cowboy type boots that go up to like here, underneath my jeans. I don't know how many of you guys are rural, rodeo type folks. You never ever wear cowboy boots on the outside of your jeans. Can't do it. So you put them under your jeans, but it's just an extra level of protection for my legs. So I do that because I'm going to be doing it, for an hour, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a day in a confined space. So I've had some close calls, but I take those precautions. Outside that, the closest call I've had, I was working at a wildlife park. We used to keep multiple snakes in some enclosures, and we had a group of 2 taipans, 2 coastal taipans, in one enclosure, in a behind-the-scenes enclosure. And how many snakes were written on every enclosure? And there'd been 2 in here for a year. So, I got in, I looked as we always do, 2 taipans, I pulled one out, put him in a bin, pulled the other one out, put him in a bin, got in this enclosure, and it's this high, so I have to stick my head in and I'm rummaging around to clean up and pick out any bits of poo or whatever, and I bumped something with my hand. And one of the other keepers had put another taipan in there, fine, but he'd forgot to record it. So I touched this very, very venomous, very, very dangerous snake. I'm going to pull my hand out quickly, crack my head on the top of the enclosure on the way out, and wrote a very angry letter in the end of week report saying, could have killed me. So that's probably the closest call I've had with a venomous snake. Did he get fired? No. He was the boss's son. So, couldn't happen. I got in a lot of trouble. But yeah, we won't go to that. Never knew about the Chinese alligator. Yeah, so there's a Chinese alligator. It was, for a long time, been considered a critically endangered species, which is kind of sad. All right, maybe we'll get out one more animal before we wrap things on up, hey? Oh no, we'll have a look. All right. We don't do many lizards, but if we're going to take out a lizard, it's got to be Prickle. Prickle is one of my favourite lizards. She's a Cunningham skink. She's as old as the hills. Tiger? No, I'm exhausted. We're not going to play with leopards tonight. But yeah. So this is Prickle. Prickle's our little Cunningham skink. This species found, whole out the east coast of Australia, or a fair chunk up the east coast of Australia, and part of South Australia as well. I think I've seen a video before in Venomman 20s. Yeah, Venomman 20 got us to do a red belly black snake video for him years ago. So yeah, we are on Venomman 20's channel as well, and we've done a few sort of TikTok crossovers. We love Prickle. I love Prickle as well. Prickle is one that she could live outside, but she lives indoors because I've only got one Cunningham skink, and because she's so friendly, and I use her for shows. That if she gets outside, being a Cunningham skink, I might not be able to get to her. So she'll disappear under all the rocks, and I won't have a beautiful Cunningham skink to talk about why we shouldn't stack rocks in national parks and things like this. So she's a very, very cool lizard. I love her. But I think we might start to wrap things up there, guys. If there's any other questions, pop them down. Otherwise, how many people are watching? We've got, 16 of you guys and 18 thumbs up. Make sure you leave a thumbs up. If you haven't already and you've hopped on over from TikTok, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to help us visit all these places we talked about, Cairns, Brisbane, New South Wales, Adelaide or whatever, think of supporting us on Patreon. We've got some wonderful supporters on Patreon already. For the last year and a half, they have basically helped us feed the animals. But now that we've got some bookings starting to trickle in, they're going to go back to doing what we set it up to do, and that is to help us visit new facilities, do more videos, things like this. Well, costs less than a cup of coffee a week. Spot on. Thank you very much, Basil, Tamara, Karen. They're all some of our fantastic Patreon supporters. It means a lot to us. Go get some sleep. I will try and get some sleep. Little Tack is due for a feed in like an hour, and then it'll be up again at 3 and up again at 6. So we'll do what we can. But favorite viper rattlesnake species. I've not worked with any vipers. The only vipers I've worked with are Urakoan rattlesnakes, which are cool. But like Mangshan vipers would be pretty cool to work with. Gaboon vipers would be cool to work with. I'd love to work with Russell's vipers. I've been told that they're a pain to keep in captivity, but just the reputation Russell's vipers have, all that sort of stuff. But all right, guys, I'm gonna hop on off. Make sure you check on back Sunday. We haven't done any videos for the last few weeks, but for the next 10 weeks, we're going through a series, and it's gonna be a little bit different to me holding animals. It's gonna be me in front of this. We're going through the 10 most invasive species in Australia. So the 10th most invasive species in Australia, we will tell you about this Sunday. And for the next 10 weeks, we will talk about feral species, some of the animals that impact our wildlife, things like that. So thanks for listening to me, guys. It's been 40 minutes. We're going to wrap things up there, but have a good one, guys. All right, see you next week.